That morning, at Hudson Terminal International Airport, a middle-aged black woman boarded a commercial flight just like any other passenger. A simple gray coat, no bodyguards, no aura of fame. She just wanted to quietly take her reserved seat, 1A. But then, a voice from the flight attendant cut through the calm soft as air, yet sharp as a blade. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This seat isn't for someone like you. What would you do if you heard that? Stay silent. Get angry or smile the way Dr. Maya Cole did." No one in that cabin knew that the woman being looked down upon was actually the CEO of the very airline operating that plane. Just 5 minutes later, the sky changed color, and so did the balance of power. This was no longer a story about a seat. It became a lesson in dignity, justice, and grace under insult. If you believe that justice doesn't have to scream to be heard, hit like, share, and subscribe. Because right now, you're about to witness a story that made the whole sky stop for a moment. The seat at 1A. The day the sky stopped. It was an ordinary morning at Hudson Terminal. The sound of announcements mixed with rolling suitcases hurried, but familiar. Amid the crowd, a black woman walked slowly, carrying herself with a calm grace, as if the rush of the world had nothing to do with her. Her name was Dr. Maya Cole. A gray wool coat, black slacks, hair neatly tied, a ticket in hand. Seat 1A. She chose to fly commercial today not to save money, but to reconnect with what her passengers experienced every day. As CEO of Aurea Airways, she rarely got the chance. She wanted to see how her employees treated a stranger when they had no idea who stood before them. As Maya stepped onto the boarding ramp, flight attendant Laura Baines greeted her with a thin, practiced smile, the kind of smile the service industry wears like a uniform. But the moment Laura glanced at the ticket, then at Maya, that smile vanished like someone flipped a switch. "I'm sorry. This seat isn't for someone like you." 7 words, short, soft, but sharp like a blade sliding from its sheath. No one around caught the full sentence. Just a few curious glances lifted up. But Maya heard every syllable clear and cold, like a pin dropping onto glass. She didn't react. No raised voice, no flushed cheeks, just a calm tilt of her head, and a question so gentle it made the other woman uneasy. "Someone like me. What do you mean by that?" Laura hesitated, then looked away. "Perhaps you're mistaken, ma'am. This seat is reserved for another passenger." Her mouth said mistaken, but her eyes said something else, not about a seat, but about place the invisible order society carves into who sits in front and who belongs in the back. Maya smiled faintly and handed over her ticket. It read clearly, 1A First Class, confirmed. Her name printed right below. Laura glanced at it, then tried to deflect. Another attendant approached, whispering something. Maya stayed still, no argument, no retreat. Her silence was heavier than protest. A white man in a suit nearby chuckled, half joking, half mean. Maybe she should try a seat in the back. Looks more like her kind of place. Thin laughter rippled through the air. Maya stayed silent. She turned toward him, not with anger, but with a quiet sadness, the kind of sadness born from seeing this too many times before. In her mind, a memory replayed her mother, Eileen Cole, years ago, forced off a flight because she'd shown up in a mechanic's uniform on her way to an interview at an aerospace firm. Maya was 8 then, watching her mother's tears fall in silence. And that day, she made herself a promise someday. No one will ever have to endure that humiliation again. Now, that promise had come full circle right here, in the stillness of a luxury cabin. Laura stood awkwardly as murmurs rose among the passengers. A middle-aged woman whispered, "She looks decent enough." "Why not let her sit?" a man replied. "I'm sure there's a reason. Better not get involved." No one wanted to be the one standing up for justice, especially when justice looked like a black woman standing alone. Maya looked at Laura and said softly, "I'll take my seat. If there's a mix-up, we can verify it with the system." Her tone wasn't loud, but the certainty in it made heads turn. Laura pressed her lips together and walked off. A minute later, she returned this time with Captain Rebecca Clean, who stepped out of the cockpit. Rebecca's posture was confident, almost cold. Her eyes held that assessing look, the kind that sizes people up for control. "What seems to be the issue here?" Laura lowered her voice. "This passenger insists she's booked for seat 1A, but the records don't seem to match. Captain." Rebecca glanced at Maya, then at the ticket, then back again, a flash of bias. "Unmistakable. Are you sure, ma'am? You might be holding someone else's ticket. Happens all the time with that kind of case." "That kind," Maya repeated, half smiling. Rebecca didn't answer. The air grew thick. The low hum of the engines waiting on the tarmac sounded like a heartbeat inside someone's chest. A young attendant watched from afar, uneasy but silent. Then another voice joined in. First Officer Mark Donovan, strolling over with casual authority. "We can flag it as a profile mismatch if needed. Move her to the back. Avoid further disturbance. Profile mismatch. A coded phrase. A way to sanitize discrimination dressed up in technical language." Maya knew that code all too well. She had personally approved it a decade ago during a system trial, but for security, not exclusion. Now she stayed quiet. Not from fear, but to see how far they'd go. Rebecca signaled. Laura picked up her radio to call security. And in that brief, suspended moment, the world rewound itself into a familiar, painful pattern. Black passenger asked to leave. White bystanders watching. Silence turning into complicity. But then, something shifted. A young Asian man, Alex Kim, a travel vlogger, was live-streaming the flight. He started recording as soon as the argument began. "Oh my God, what's happening here? She's just trying to sit in her seat." The camera panned, catching Maya's face, not angry, not scared, just calm. The light in her eyes glinted like a fine edge of steel. In that instant, anyone who's ever been humiliated, dismissed, or pushed out of a place they belonged would understand exactly how Maya Cole felt. No shouting, no scene, just a single deep breath. Her silence was her rebellion, and only a few minutes later, everyone on that flight would learn that the woman they were trying to remove was the one person with the power to decide whether that plane would take off at all. The moment flight attendant Laura walked away, leaving behind the faint chill of her perfume, Maya Cole closed her eyes. Outside the window, the soft morning light of Hudson shimmered against the polished surface of the plane, right over the Aurea Airways logo, the symbol of an empire she had built from nothing. But today, she wasn't a CEO. She was just a black passenger, name printed on a ticket and a heart that wanted the truth. When power steps out of the room, what does a company's real culture look like? After the sting of those 7 words, "This seat isn't for someone like you," Maya didn't get angry. She observed. She understood that sometimes the silence of the powerful becomes the truest mirror, reflecting how others choose to use their power. This story didn't begin in anger. It began as a test of humanity. Maya Cole wore no designer suit, no assistant by her side, no director's badge hanging from her neck. She had gone undercover, booking her own ticket through the public system, using her full name but no title. Every step had been carefully planned. This time, she didn't want to be greeted with bows and courtesy. She wanted to see was the smile genuine when there was no business card to protect her mite. Inside the cockpit, Captain Rebecca Clean scanned the passenger list. Her eyes paused at the name Maya Cole, 1A. A tiny crease appeared between her brows, subtle, but telling. 1A, who is she? Not a board member, not on the priority list. Her tone was cold, laced with suspicion. Laura Baines, the attendant, replied softly. Probably a walk-in guest. But she doesn't really look like someone who sits in 1A, if you know what I mean. They exchanged a look and a quiet laugh. It wasn't loud, but it built a wall between us and them. Maya heard it all. She sat silently, gazing out the window. There was no anger in her eyes, only the still disappointment of someone who once believed humanity had come further than this. At Aurea's headquarters, Maya had been the first to establish the Equity and Service Initiative, a training program to teach cross-cultural awareness. She had believed people could change, but maybe prejudice still lived on in jokes, in smiles, in the way people decided someone's worth by their skin or their clothes. Today, she wanted to see it with her own eyes, not through reports, not through cameras, but through the raw, unfiltered behavior of those who thought she wasn't worth respecting. Back in the cockpit, Rebecca glanced at her screen. A warning code appeared. Profile mismatch. Normally, that code meant a booking error or an ID discrepancy. But First Officer Mark Donovan smirked. You can leave that flag on. Use it if things get complicated. Saves you from having to explain. Rebecca nodded. No more words needed. Profile mismatch. 3 harmless-sounding words, but the perfect excuse to legitimize exclusion. Oh. In the cabin, Laura stepped forward, resting her hand on the armrest of seat 1A. Ma'am, I'm afraid there's been a system error. Could you please wait in the rear cabin while we sort this out? Maya looked up, the same calm smile still on her lips. I understand, but my ticket clearly says this seat. I'll wait right here, if you don't mind. Laura glanced around, searching for support. Some passengers looked uneasy, others avoided eye contact, suddenly very busy with their phones. Only a little girl in row 2 stared wide-eyed at Maya and whispered to her mother, Mom, why can't that lady sit there? The mother gently hushed her. Shh, don't ask, sweetheart. Maya heard it. She smiled faintly, not out of joy, but because that innocent question was too pure to be ignored. In that moment, anyone who had ever felt the sting of disdainful eyes would understand. The pain wasn't in the words. It was in the silence of the crowd that agreed by saying nothing. Everyone knew what was happening. No one said it aloud. Rebecca approached again, voice edged with command. She needs to leave the seat now. We've got other passengers waiting. Laura nodded. I already told her. Captain. Maya met Rebecca's gaze, no defiance, no submission. Just calm. So calm. It made the other woman uneasy. Are you sure you want to handle this way? Maya asked. Rebecca arched a brow, her tone frost cold. I'm just following procedure. Following procedure. 2 words Maya had heard 100 times used to disguise what was wrong, to make injustice sound official. She took a slow breath, not to suppress anger, but to remember. Every face, every tone, every way they wielded their little slices of power. Some passengers began to raise their phones. A few recognized her and whispered, "Wait, isn't that Maya Cole, the CEO of Aurea?" But Maya didn't speak, not yet. She wanted them to see their actions through to the end, so that truth could reveal itself, without anyone's defense. Because sometimes, justice doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand still and let hypocrisy expose itself. Inside the cockpit, Rebecca radioed ground security. "We have a non-compliant passenger possible fake ticket," Mark Donovan added. "I'll upload the profile mismatch tag to the system. They'll take care of it." Security Chief Jason Reed replied over comms copy that, "On my way." Maya heard every word through the cabin's internal feed. Quietly, she activated the hidden recording mode on her AI contact lens, a prototype technology developed by Aurea itself. The lens captured everything, not just images, but tone, emotion, and every flicker of expression. She thought to herself, "They won't just be seen. They'll be exposed by truth itself." When Jason Reed stepped into the cabin, his presence made the air tighten. "What's going on here?" Rebecca spoke first. "Passenger doesn't match the records, does it? Sir? Needs to be handled before takeoff." Jason looked at Maya, narrowed his eyes, and said flatly, "Ma'am, you need to leave this plane before I have to make you." Maya rose slowly, every movement deliberate, graceful as if giving them one last chance to take back their words. No one realized that behind that calm stare was the power of the one person who could keep the entire aircraft grounded. The Protocol 11 signal pulsed from Maya Cole's wristband, the quiet heartbeat of justice. No one in the cabin knew it had been sent. But in the top floors of Aurea Airways headquarters, an amber warning light began to flash, marking an ethical emergency on Flight 409. Meanwhile, in first class, everything continued like a play, a performance where the characters were named Power, Procedure, and Prejudice. Mark Donovan, the first officer, sat in the cockpit, eyes cold against the glow of the passenger manifest. The name Maya Cole, 1A, was highlighted in red identity not verified. A perfect excuse. He leaned toward Captain Rebecca Cleaney, his tone half amused, half cruel. "You know, it's been years since I've seen someone this bold. Taking seat 1A without a priority file." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Then handle it. We're not delaying takeoff for this." Mark typed a few keys, voice steady. "We can flag it as a profile mismatch." 3 words soft as breath, heavy as a system built to disguise discrimination in administrative language. Profile mismatch, a term meant to mean data discrepancy. But in the airline world, everyone knew it was also a convenient veil, a digital way to justify removing passengers who didn't fit the profile. People like Maya. Rebecca nodded. "Tag it. I don't want arguments mid-flight." "Copy that, Captain." The click of his key was like a blade cutting across someone's dignity. Ning. In the cabin, Maya sat quietly. Through her hidden network access, she heard every word. Each syllable of profile mismatch hit her ears clear enough to touch. She smiled faintly, not because she was amused, but because she had just confirmed what she'd long suspected. Discrimination no longer came dressed in anger. It came coded, cold, polished, and almost impossible to prove. In that moment, she wasn't the humiliated passenger anymore. She was the observer watching a social experiment unfold in real time. Footsteps echoed. Jason Reed, head of security, appeared in the aisle tall, broad-shouldered, voice deep and commanding. He was the kind of man who believed order was what kept the world turning. "Are you Maya Cole?" "Yes. You've been flagged under profile mismatch. I need you to leave this plane before things get complicated." Maya met his stare calm, steady, almost disarming. "And if I refuse," Jason's jaw tightened, "then I'll have to exercise my authority. I'm the one in charge here." A brief silence. Maya tilted her head. Her voice still soft, I understand. "But are you using your authority, or just protecting someone else's mistake?" The question pierced through his armor. He was used to fear, not composure. A young passenger lifted his phone. "Recording?" "What's going on here, Laura Baines?" The attendant quickly interjected. "It's fine, sir. Just a misunderstanding. This passenger doesn't match the security file." Maya chuckled lightly. The file, or the face that line made heads turn. In the cockpit, Rebecca heard it through the internal channel. Her voice came out flat security. "Remove her. I don't want trouble." Jason motioned to two guards. One placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. If it had been anyone else, they might have shouted, fought, pleaded. But Maya only said, softly, "Do what you believe is right. I'll let your actions speak for the policies this company stands by." Jason hesitated. "Who do you think you are?" Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "Just someone who's flown Aurea long enough to know. Even the sky sometimes needs to see itself clearly." He frowned, not understanding. "Take her out," he ordered. "Oh." Then a voice from the middle rose. Alex Kim, the travel vlogger who'd been live streaming, spoke up. "Excuse me, this passenger has a valid ticket. What are you people doing?" Cameras turned. More phones came up. Laura panicked. "Please stop filming." "Sir, this is an internal matter." But it was already too late. Thousands, soon to be millions, were watching live. Maya sat still, calm as stone. No anger, just one quiet, knowing smile. Across the world, viewers watching the live stream didn't yet realize that the woman they pitied wasn't just a victim. She was the founder of the very airline that was humiliating her. Back in the cockpit, a sudden alert flashed red across the main display. "Flight suspended, authorization pending." "CEO verification?" Rebecca frowned. "What the hell is this?" "Who has clearance to halt a flight?" Mark's voice dropped. "Only someone with CEO credentials." A chill ran through her spine. "Awesome." In the cabin, Maya touched her bracelet, activating a verification mode. "Good morning, Flight 409. An AI voice echoed through the intercom. Identity confirmed Dr. Maya Cole, Chief Executive Officer, Aurea Airways. 5 seconds of silence. 5 seconds long enough to reverse the entire balance of power. Rebecca went pale. Laura froze. Jason dropped his hand as if it had touched fire. Maya stood, smoothing her coat, her tone as calm as it had been from the beginning. "I don't want anyone losing their job over a foolish moment. But today, I need you all to see what you've just done. No shouting, no revenge, just a silence so deep it emptied the air from the cabin." As Maya stepped away from seat 1A, every lens in the cabin followed her. But what no one knew was that inside her AI contact lens, every word, every glance, every smirk had already been recorded. And in just a few hours, that truth would spread not through accusations, but through the images of those who had forgotten where dignity truly lives. Cold light from the control panel reflected across Maya Cole's face, and suddenly, everything went still. The truth was out. She wasn't just a passenger who had been humiliated. She was the woman who ran the entire airline. In that instant, those who thought they held power realized something terrifying. Even a calm gaze can overturn an entire hierarchy. What they didn't yet know was that every word, every action they'd taken was now recorded forever. The AI contact lens on Maya's left eye, something that looked like a sleek accessory, was, in fact, a high-level recording device developed by Aurea's own research team for experimental pilots. Today, it was capturing everything, not for revenge, but for evidence. That lens didn't just record images. It captured emotion, the tremor in a voice, the rhythm of a heartbeat, the subtle flicker in someone's eyes when they lied. And in its frame, Maya wasn't the victim. She was the witness to the very culture she had built, now turning against the ideals she once believed in. Honte. Alex Kim, the young Korean-American travel vlogger, was still live-streaming, unaware that his feed was about to become global news. He had meant to document a case of discrimination, but the longer he filmed, the clearer it became he was witnessing a turning point. "Do you see this? Everyone," he said, voice trembling slightly. "They told her to leave the plane because they thought she didn't belong here, but she's actually the one who owns the airline." Comments poured down the screen. "Unbelievable! It's 2025. How is this still happening? She's so calm. I don't think I could stay that composed." Maya caught the murmurs, the clicks of cameras and phones, but she didn't look toward Alex. She knew the real images weren't being captured on his lens, but in the eyes of those who had once looked down on her. Toward the back, Mia Lopez, a major influencer with millions of followers, happened to be on that flight. She'd just been heading to Los Angeles for a brand event. But when she saw what was happening, her instinct as a communicator took over. She raised her phone and began recording. "No one deserves to be treated like this, no matter who they are," she said straight into the camera. "And when we stay silent, we stand with the one doing the harm." Her words echoed through the cabin. Some passengers lowered their heads. A few shut off their phones. Others nodded quietly in agreement. A small wave began to ripple from silent complicity to the realization that someone needed to speak up. Meanwhile, Laura Baines and Rebecca Clean were still in shock. They looked at each other like two people realizing they had just stepped over a line they couldn't uncross. Rebecca whispered, "She's really the CEO." Laura stammered, I didn't know. I was just following procedure." Maya heard that. She turned, her voice as soft as smoke. "Procedure doesn't make people. Laura, people make procedure, and they're the ones who twist it." No accusation, just a quiet disappointment so deep it hurt to hear. Laura lowered her head, tears welling up not from fear of losing her job, but from realizing she had betrayed her own humanity. In the AI lens, everything was recorded, Rebecca's face frozen and pale when she learned Maya's identity. Jason Reed's hand stopping mid-air as he tried to pull her away. The rapid breathing and guilty eyes of several passengers. Technology doesn't feel empathy, but it remembers truth. And the truth that day wasn't loud. It was a long, chilling silence. At Aurea's operations center, Priya Desai, Maya's executive assistant, received the live data stream from the contact lens. She immediately alerted Carla Moore, the company's chief legal officer, who was on night shift at headquarters. "Carla, you need to see this. They just tagged the CEO herself as a profile mismatch." Carla exhaled, half angry, half heartbroken. "I warned them. The culture among the flight teams is slipping off course. This isn't just an incident. It's a moral breakdown." And from that moment, a chain reaction began. Internal compliance teams were activated. Data from the AI lens was backed up, analyzed, and prepped for transmission to the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, all because of a single moment's 7 words and one contemptuous glance. "Oher, oher mo, mingi mine, noi." Back in the cabin, Maya rose. No one spoke. The engine still hummed, but no one cared about takeoff anymore. She walked slowly down the aisle, each step a quiet reminder of the cost of arrogance. She stopped beside Alex Kim. "Thank you for recording this," she said softly. "But remember, this isn't a video to shame anyone. It's a record to fix what's broken." Alex nodded, eyes glassy. "Yes, ma'am. I understand. I just wanted the world to see that someone can choose calm over anger." Maya smiled, a real one this time. "And that's why I still believe the sky is worth trusting." Mia Lopez came closer, laying a hand on Maya's shoulder. "I'll help share this," she said, voice trembling, "because there are millions out there who get told every day, 'This seat isn't for someone like you.' It's time that changed." Maya met her eyes and replied gently, "We can't change the world through anger, Mia, but we can illuminate it through truth." The AI lens kept recording, but now it wasn't documenting an incident. It was capturing a moment of human redemption. As the plane idled on standby, Maya looked out the window, the sky washed in gold by a fading sunset. In that light, she saw her mother's reflection, Eileen Cole, the woman once thrown off a flight for inappropriate attire. The memory returned along with a promise made long ago. No one will ever be shamed for their dignity again. But she had never imagined that to keep that promise, she would have to fight inside the very house she had built herself. The sky outside had turned a pale shade of orange. The last light of the afternoon streamed through the cabin window, casting a faint ashen glow across Maya Cole's face. In the reflection on the glass, she saw herself a woman calm in the storm of humiliation. But beneath that stillness, an old wound had quietly begun to bleed, because some pains never grow. "Whoa." A voice broke through the quiet. "Attention passengers of Flight 409. Departure has been temporarily delayed. Please remain seated." The announcement was sterile, emotionless, the kind of voice a system uses to distance itself from discomfort. And then, a laugh, deep, slow, and smug, slicing through the cabin silence. It came from Richard Vance, CEO of Titan Aurea Airways' fiercest rival, and the same man who had publicly belittled Maya more than once at industry conferences. Vance was live streaming with a friend over his headset, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, come on, this is gold. The CEO of Aurea getting kicked off her own plane. I didn't think that script existed outside of comedy." His laughter spread like an oil slick cold, slick and toxic. Maya didn't turn around, but in her eyes, the light shifted from the warmth of sunset to the chill of steel. A passenger behind her whispered, "That's Richard Vance, the Titan Air guy. Aurea's competition, another replied. He might be buying Aurea soon. Their stock's tanking. The words pricked like needles, not because she feared loss, but because she knew what they meant behind every act of discrimination. There's always a hand of power pulling the strings. Vance wasn't just mocking her. He was baiting her, waiting for a single crack in her composure. One angry word, one impulsive move, and the headlines would do. The rest, black female CEO loses temper, threatens staff. It was a pattern she'd seen too many times. A person of color shows anger, and years of achievement vanish in a single headline. But not today. Not for her. And not for the woman who had once taught her pride through silence. In her mind, Eileen Cole appeared clear as breath. The memory didn't open with tears. It began with the sound of a plane door closing. Maya was 8. Her mother, a mechanical engineer, had been invited to interview at a major airline. She'd come straight from the factory floor, her overalls still stained with oil. The flight attendant looked her up and down, frowning. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This cabin isn't for maintenance staff." Her mother had answered softly, "I'm not staff. I'm an applicant for an engineering position." The attendant had smiled a thin, condescending smile. "Well, maybe you should know your place." Then, they removed her mother from the flight right in front of her daughter. No argument, no tears, just a hand gently gripping Maya's, and words she would never forget. "Don't let them teach you that you're beneath them. Maya, one day, you'll fly, but in your own way." Back then, Maya didn't understand. But sitting now in seat 1A, reliving the same script, she did. The scar had never healed. When Richard Vance laughed again, Maya closed her eyes. That sound merged with another laugh. The one from years ago. The laugh of a flight attendant who thought her mother didn't belong. Together, they formed one voice. The sound of people who believe they have the right to define others' worth. A black passenger in the rear cabin leaned toward his young son. "You see, son, the world's never been fair, but there are people like her who make it look itself in the mirror," the boy whispered. "How do they do that?" "Dad, by not bowing down and not striking back either." Maya heard him, and for the first time that day, a faint warmth cracked through the cold walls inside her. Because sometimes all justice needs to begin is one witness who refuses to look away. As the cabin sat heavy in awkward silence, Maya picked up her phone and opened an old note titled Eileen's Promise. Inside was just one line. "True justice isn't when we defeat others, it's when we make them face themselves." She set the phone down, her gaze steady. She was no longer the 8-year-old girl watching her mother's humiliation. She was the woman standing at the edge of changing the very system that once hurt them. And she knew revenge through power is easy. Justice through character is what lasts. Itingi. Richard Vance wasn't done. He rose from his seat, voice dripping with mockery. "Ms. Cole, what an honor to witness how you manage crises. Tell me, Aurea hiring for your job yet?" A few weak laughs broke out, forced, uneasy, ashamed. Maya lifted her head, voice soft as mist. "Mr. Vance, I think you're mistaken. I'm not managing a crisis, I'm observing a culture. And thank you for giving me one more example to study." The cabin went completely still, not because she'd raised her voice, but because she hadn't. Vance froze for a moment, then turned away, clearing his throat awkwardly. Maya didn't look after him. She didn't need to. Because the greatest victory is making those who belittle you shrink in their own reflection. In the cockpit. A signal blinked Protocol 11, active, at Aurea headquarters. Priya Desai and Carla Moore were tracing the live data from Flight 409. What they were uncovering wasn't just a technical glitch, it was a systemic pattern of discrimination, programmed deep within Aurea's operational code. And as the last rays of sunlight burned out, Maya whispered under her breath, "Sometimes, to fly higher, you first have to stop and fix your wings." The sunset faded beyond the airplane window, its dying glow reflected across Maya Cole's face. In the cockpit, the line Protocol 11, activated, blinked steadily, like the heartbeat of a buried truth. No one in the cabin knew that when Maya had lightly touched her smart wristband. The entire command system of Aurea Airways had received an emergency signal. From that second on, this was no longer a confrontation between a passenger and a crew. It was a test of conscience for an entire organization. At the 47th floor of Aurea headquarters, in the middle of Manhattan, the office lights still burned through the night. Priya Desai, Maya's executive assistant, was packing up to leave when her monitor suddenly flared bright red. Emergency ethics alert, Protocol 11 initiated by CEO Maya Cole. She froze, her heart racing. Protocol 11, Aurea's highest level emergency code. It was reserved for the gravest violations, ethical breaches, discrimination, internal corruption. It wasn't for mistakes. It was for moral collapse. Priya took a deep breath, opened an encrypted channel, and called Carla Moore, head of legal affairs. "Carla, Protocol 11 just triggered from Maya Flight 409. It could be about Captain Rebecca Clean's crew." Carla paused. Her voice was steady, but underneath, there was steel. "Send me everything passenger manifest, crew IDs, system logs, and Priya, keep it between us." Lines of data began to cascade down Priya's screen streams of flight records pulled from Aurea Flight Core, the company's operational brain. Every flight, every passenger complaint, every coded flag. She filtered for Flight 409. Moments later, she frowned. "Carla, are you seeing this 15 separate complaints under profile mismatch? All marked pending review, no action." Carla's tone darkened, buried. In her experience, pending review was corporate speak for don't touch it. She traced the access history and the same names kept appearing. Rebecca Clean, Mark Donovan, Laura Baines, Jason Reed. Carla leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Priya, pull Mark's financial logs last 3 months." Priya typed rapidly, opening the co-pilot's internal account. Amid legitimate transactions, a series of unregistered transfers appeared from an offshore entity named Skyvision Consulting. Carla's lips tightened. "Skyvision? I know that name. It's a shell company under Titan Air, registered in the Cayman Islands." Priya inhaled sharply. "You mean Vance has been paying off our own flight crew?" Carla's voice dropped to a chill. "Not just paying them. He's orchestrating this sabotaging Aurea from the inside. Discredit the brand, crash the stock, trigger a scandal, then move in for the takeover. And Mark with that profile mismatch code is the perfect weapon." As they spoke, more archived reports surfaced. Passenger complaints, small voices. Ignored, erased. "They told me to switch seats for security reasons." "I think they just didn't like me," a flight attendant said. "This seat isn't for someone like you." I didn't know what she meant, but it hurt. It's happened before. Always the same. Always the same faces. Every report marked as reviewed by Donovan, no action. Carla shut her eyes briefly. That professional culture Rebecca brags about is just a curtain for systemic bias. Priya entered another command, pulling up the cockpit camera feed from Flight 409. The video appeared Rebecca and Mark speaking in low tones. Jason Reed behind them, sneering. Flag her profile mismatch. Get her off. Don't let her delay the schedule. Carla exhaled slowly. This isn't negligence anymore. Priya, this is intent. Priya clenched her jaw. Maya knew. She put herself in the line of fire just to expose the people she once trusted. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the servers filled the silence, the sound of a machine breathing under the weight of human failure. Carla lifted her phone and switched to a secure channel. Legal ops. This is Carla Moore. I'm ordering an immediate suspension of Flight Crew 409 not for safety, but for ethics violations and conflict of interest. Suspend Rebecca Clean, Mark Donovan, Jason Reed, and Laura Baines effective immediately. Priya asked softly. What about Maya? Carla paused. She's still on that plane, isn't she? Yes? Then trust her. She knows exactly what she's doing. Back aboard Flight 409, a small confirmation flickered across Maya's smart lens. Protocol 11 confirmed. Team Carla, Priya engaged. She exhaled quietly, deeply, not from relief, but from the weight of knowing there was no turning back. She was no longer a lone target of prejudice. She was leading a cultural reckoning from within her own empire. In the rear cabin, Richard Vance, still basking in his imagined victory, glanced down at his smartwatch. A notification flashed: SkyVision account frozen. Investigations ongoing. He froze. The sharp eyes of a man used to control the market flickered just once with fear. Maya caught that flicker as she walked past. She said nothing, just met his eyes for a single second, enough to let him know that his mockery had just become evidence. In Manhattan, Carla compiled the preliminary report for the FAA and the Securities Commission. The subject line contained only 3 words: systemic bias exposed. She stopped for a moment, looking out the window at the city blazing with midnight light. She thought of Maya, the woman holding her calm at the center of the storm she herself had set in motion to cleanse the sky she loved. And Carla smiled faintly. Some battles don't need explosions, just a single code and someone brave enough to press send. As the data rippled outward toward the authorities, Flight 409 still hadn't moved. In the cockpit, Rebecca Clean read the internal message: mission suspended, under investigation. Her face drained of color. Back in 1A. Maya Cole sat with her hands clasped, silent, steady. No one knew that within minutes. She would force the entire system to stop not just the plane, but the arrogance that had been flying it for years. As Aurea's system triggered Protocol 11, justice began its silent movement, not with sirens, but with cold streams of data flowing through servers in Manhattan. But aboard Flight 409, where every gaze was fixed on Maya Cole, the air grew thick-hot, fragile, and ready to shatter. On one side stood false power people who believed they could throw her off the plane like anyone else. On the other side stood a woman who knew sometimes to change a company's culture, you must let it see just how naked it really is. Metatinith. In the cockpit, Captain Rebecca Clean gripped the yoke, sweat beading across her forehead. The control screen flashed: takeoff clearance suspended. She didn't understand why. Mark Donovan, the co-pilot, turned to her. Probably a system glitch. We can override it if you want, Rebecca snapped. No more chaos. This has gone far enough. She flipped on the intercom. Her voice, sharp and sterile, filled the cabin. This is Captain Clean. For security reasons, a non-compliant passenger will be removed from this flight immediately. Airport security is en route. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances. No one spoke. Even the hum of the air vents felt too loud. The only person unmoved was Maya Cole, seated in 1A. Wax. Nahi. Outside the cockpit. Laura Baines tried to steady her trembling hands. Her voice cracked slightly. Ma'am, please, you need to leave the aircraft now. If not, we'll have to involve airport security. Maya turned her head slowly, her calm smile slicing through the haze of pretense. Are you sure you know who you're speaking to? Laura. Her voice wasn't loud, but it rang through the cabin like a metallic chime. Silence. Laura froze, lips quivering. I'm just following the captain's orders. And your captain, Maya said quietly. Does she know who she's talking to? Rebecca stepped out of the cockpit just then. Her eyes were cold, her voice like a blade. For a passenger violating regulations, I don't care who she is. Maya rose, unhurried. No anger, no fear, only composure. You don't care to know, or you don't want to know. The question landed like a strike of lightning, and Rebecca faltered. In the middle rows, Alex Kim, the travel vlogger, still held his phone steady on live stream. Hundreds of thousands were already watching. Now the number climbed by the second. Comments flooded the feed. This can't be real. She's the CEO and they're kicking her off. She's so calm. I want my daughter to learn that strength. Rebecca noticed the camera trained on her. Her face stiffened. Turn that off. Young man, she barked. Alex stayed composed. No, Captain. Millions are watching. They deserve to see what's happening on your airline. The cabin froze. Someone whispered, Oh my God, it's live online. This is Poto. Maya stood still, unshaken. She knew this was the threshold, the moment where either she would expose how people treat power when they think they possess it, or lose the one chance to awaken their conscience. Rebecca, Maya said evenly, do you believe one small mistake can bring an entire airline to a halt? Rebecca lifted her chin, clinging to control. I didn't make a mistake. I'm protecting flight security. Maya tilted her head slightly. Security or arrogance? From the rear cabin, Mia Lopez, the influencer, stood up. Excuse me, but she's done nothing wrong. I'm a business class passenger, and I've witnessed everything. She's been calm, polite, and in her assigned seat. Another passenger spoke up. That's right. She hasn't raised her voice once. Murmurs began to rise, the quiet rebellion of decency breaking through years of silence. Rebecca clenched her fists and turned to Jason Reed, head of security, blocking the door. Remove her. Now. Jason nodded, stepping forward. But before his hand could reach Maya, the intercom came alive with a deep, mechanical voice. Urgent transmission from Aurea Airways headquarters. All operations on Flight 409 are temporarily suspended. The flight crew is to cease all actions pending identity verification by CEO Dr. Maya Cole. The entire cabin froze. Rebecca's eyes widened. Jason stopped mid-step. Laura staggered back. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Alex Kim's camera turned toward Maya. Light from the window fell across her face, soft, golden, almost radiant. She smiled and said quietly, Now, Make sure you know who you're speaking to. Rebecca stammered. You. You're yes. Maya nodded. Maya Cole, CEO of Aurea Airways. The one who signed every single one of your contracts. A collective gasp filled the cabin. Laura's hand flew to her mouth. Jason stepped back. Mark, still in the cockpit, looked pale as paper. Maya's voice stayed gentle. I wanted to believe arrogance and prejudice were things of the past. I thought I'd built an airline where fairness could truly fly. But it seems Aurea's skies aren't as clear as I hoped. Alex's live stream shook slightly in his trembling hands. Millions watched, witnessing a moment where true power didn't need to shout to be heard. Maya turned toward the camera. No performance, just truth. I don't want anyone humiliated today, not even those who humiliated me. Because justice isn't here to punish. It's here to remind us who we've become. Several passengers bowed their heads. Someone wiped away tears. No one had imagined that a single calm voice could stop an entire system in its tracks. Then, Rebecca tried to speak, but the words never came. Maya looked at her one last time. You can keep your captain's seat, Rebecca. But remember, control doesn't just live in the cockpit. It lives in how we see other people. No applause, no cheering. Only silence, the kind that follows awakening. Outside the window, the plane remained still, its engine quiet. But somewhere in the sky above, justice had already taken flight. In that suspended moment, internal messages began to flash. Flight Crew 409, suspended. FAA and SEC request immediate investigation. Maya sat back in her seat, folding her hands over her wristband. Takeoff can wait, she whispered, but the truth never will. The cabin of Flight 409 was wrapped in silence. Every eye fixed on the woman in Seat 1A, the same woman who, only minutes ago, had been treated like an intruder. Outside, the evening sky had turned a pale, silvery gray, but inside, what was about to be revealed wasn't the sky, it was the true face of false power. Captain Rebecca Clean still stood frozen, her lips dry, her hands clenched tight around the edge of the pilot's chair. You're saying you're the CEO of Aurea Airways? Her voice trembled, caught between disbelief and dread. Maya Cole nodded softly, the movement barely noticeable like wind passing through glass. Not just Aurea Airways, she said slowly. I'm also the CEO of Aurea Innovations, the aviation tech group that built the systems running everything around you. The words weren't loud, but they struck like thunder through the brittle pride of the flight crew. From the cockpit, Mark Donovan shot to his feet. That's impossible. If you're really the CEO, then why are you sitting here dressed like that? Maya turned toward him, her eyes holding no anger, only a quiet sorrow. Because I wanted to see how people behave when they think they're above someone, and how they treat those they believe are beneath them. A soft gasp rippled through the cabin. Simple words, but they sucked the air right out of the room. Rebecca straightened her shoulders, forcing back her panic. Dr. Cole, there must be some misunderstanding. We were just following procedure. Procedure, Maya interrupted, her tone calm. Almost too calm. You've turned procedure into a shield for your contempt. Rebecca, and you've forgotten you were my choice when I trusted you to lead our elite crew. The words landed like a crash of glass. Rebecca's composure broke instantly. A soft chime sounded. Ding. The emergency light began to pulse red. The voice of Aurea's central AI echoed through the cabin. Cold and neutral internal notice from Aurea Airways headquarters. By direct order of CEO, Dr. Maya Cole. Flight Crew 409 including Captain Rebecca Clean, Co-Pilot Mark Donovan, Flight Attendant Laura Baines, and Chief of Security Jason Reed are hereby suspended pending internal investigation. Flight 409 is grounded immediately. Silence exploded into something heavier than noise. No one spoke, but every breath, every glance, carried 1,000 unspoken realizations, shock, shame, and awakening. Laura Baines, the attendant who had once said, "This seat isn't for someone like you," stood frozen, clutching the safety manual with trembling fingers. Jason Reed, the head of security who had loomed like a threat minutes earlier, now stared at the floor, jaw locked. Mark Donovan sank into his seat, hands shaking uncontrollably, knowing his career, his reputation, everything he'd built, had just turned to smoke. Ah. And Maya, she didn't move. There was no triumph, no gloating, only quiet composure. The look of someone who had long grown used to proving her worth under the weight of others' prejudice. In the middle rows, Alex Kim, still live streaming, whispered into his mic, "Oh my God, she really is the CEO. And they just got suspended on the plane." The comment feed flooded like a storm. "Unbelievable. She's calm as steel. That's not revenge. That's justice. She just showed the world what real power looks like." Rebecca turned back to Maya, her voice barely holding together. "Please, could you give me a chance to explain?" Maya's reply came soft but steady. "Rebecca, opportunities don't come from the position you hold, but from how you treat people when they're in a lower seat than yours." Her voice carried no bitterness, only the quiet authority of someone who had once been wounded, dismissed, and who now taught the world through truth, not vengeance. Laura broke down in tears. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't think." Maya's tone stayed gentle. "You don't need to apologize to me. Laura, apologize to yourself for forgetting that serving people was never about choosing who deserves kindness." Her words rippled through the cabin. Some passengers nodded, others wiped their eyes, and a few simply looked down, humbled. At the back, Mia Lopez, the influencer still filming, whispered to her lens, "She didn't shout. She didn't need backup." She made an entire plane bow its head with just 3 words, "I'm the CEO." A middle-aged man in business class murmured quietly, "Sometimes, justice doesn't come with rage. It arrives when you no longer have to prove anything at all." When the chaos settled, Maya walked toward the front of the cabin. She pressed the intercom button and spoke, her voice clear, composed, unwavering. "This is Dr. Maya Cole, CEO of Aurea Airways. From this moment forward, every flight we operate will carry not only passengers, but responsibility. That no one, in any seat, has the right to look down on another's dignity." Her tone didn't shake. Each word landed like steel nails in silk firm, warm, undeniable. Rebecca sat down silent, no longer a captain, no longer in control, and Maya, the woman they'd tried to remove from the plane, was now the one grounding the entire system. The plane didn't take off, but in that stillness, a new chapter in Aurea's history was written not with outrage, but with composure, reason, and the belief that justice can, indeed, arrive in silence. Outside, the airport lights glimmered against the body of Flight 409, a jet grounded not by mechanical failure, but by ethical reckoning. At that same moment in Manhattan, Priya Desai and Carla Moore received the final confirmation: Flight Crew 409 suspended. But neither of them knew that in the shadows of Titan Air, Richard Vance was already preparing his final move, a move that would become the very trap he set for himself. Flight 409 remained motionless on the Hudson Terminal runway. Inside, after Maya Cole revealed her identity and suspended the entire flight crew, the air was thick, not with fear, but with self-reflection. In those tense, deceptive moments of silence, the mask of false power began to crack, and the truth was about to expose itself, not by force, but by the arrogance of the man who built the illusion. In business class, Richard Vance, CEO of Titan Air, Aurea's fiercest rival, sat calmly as if nothing had changed. He took a sip of wine, adjusted his collar, and murmured to his assistant beside him, "Call the strategy desk. Tell them to prepare a statement of sympathy for the media. If Aurea falls, we'll look like the noble ones first." He thought it was a private conversation. He forgot Alex Kim was still live streaming, microphone open, camera rolling, and not just Alex. Maya's AI lens was still active, recording every word, every smirk, every gesture under the dim cabin lights. "You see," Vance said smoothly, "I told you just a few minutes of delay and a little discrimination scandal, and Aurea's stock drops at least 8%. Then Titan steps in, heroic, offering to rescue them. And soon, Maya Cole will be selling Aurea to me for pennies." His assistant hesitated. "But what if she really is on this plane?" Sir Vance chuckled. "Cold and confident, even better. Makes the drama look real. No one will believe she stayed calm through this. The media will doubt her. And doubt is the fastest virus I know." Maya heard every word. No reaction. Just a steady gaze, deep, quiet, and cold. The look of someone seeing a truth too old to be shocking anymore. A passenger behind her whispered, "Is he serious?" And like a domino effect, murmurs spread across the cabin, the once silent crowd now staring at Vance with dawning disgust and clarity. Alex Kim, though his hands trembled, kept the camera trained on Vance. "You're hearing this, folks," he said softly to his live stream. "This isn't discrimination. This is a planned takedown." Comments flooded the screen. Record everything. Justice is live right now. No way out for him. At the front, Maya sat still, illuminated by a shaft of pale evening light. No one could tell what she was thinking. In her earpiece, Carla Moore, Aurea's head of legal, spoke calmly. "Maya, we've got the data. Wire transfers from Titan Air to Mark Donovan confirmed. Vance's words are recorded. One word from you, and we'll forward everything to the SEC." Maya didn't answer immediately. She looked around the cabin at frightened passengers, at ashamed faces. Then she replied softly, "No. Let him expose himself. Truth has more power than any indictment when it's revealed in the open, under the eyes of the world." And right then, a voice called out from the back of the cabin, "Stop filming for a second. I need to say something." Heads turned. It was Tom Harris, the reserve pilot for Flight 409. Normally quiet and reserved, Tom now stood with trembling hands and a determined face. I've been with Aurea for 8 years, he began, voice unsteady but strong. And what, doctor? Cole just went through it's not new. The so-called profile mismatch has been around for a long time. Part of something they called the Elite Club, a group Captain Rebecca and Mark started to maintain standards for first class. A wave of shocked murmurs filled the air. They said passengers who don't fit the brand image would be reassigned, flagged, or quietly taken off the flight. I wanted to speak up, but I was afraid. He looked at Maya, eyes glistening. Today, seeing you sit there so calm, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. Alex turned his camera toward Tom, voice trembling. You're saying the Elite Club was real? Tom nodded. Yes. And Mark once bragged to me that Titan Air sponsored their private events. They thought they were protecting the brand, but they were destroying Aurea from the inside. Maya gave a slow nod, her gaze full of quiet gratitude. Thank you, Tom. You just did what so many forgot. You spoke the truth. Meanwhile, Richard Vance still had no idea the world was listening. He smirked, poured himself another drink, and sneered, pathetic. A black woman thinking she can run an airline. The world still belongs to those who know how to play the game, and I'm the one who writes the rules. The moment those words left his mouth, millions heard them. Within seconds, his phone buzzed violently. Messages from his PR team, his lawyers, his board. Mr. Vance, you're being streamed live. Everything you said is viral. Stop talking now. NCs. Vance's face drained of color. He turned, eyes wide, and saw Alex's camera still rolling, and Maya, still seated looking at him. No anger, no smugness, just calm, the kind that comes when justice has already begun to move. She stood and walked toward him slowly. You're right, Vance, she said softly. The world is for those who know the rules of the game, but only if they remember to keep their conscience. The air thickened. Vance opened his mouth, but no words came. Every lens, Alex's, Mia's, the passengers', and Aurea's internal feed was now trained squarely on him. And in front of millions of viewers, the man who had laughed at another's humiliation had become the living proof of his own corruption. Moments later, airport police and FAA investigators boarded the plane. Vance bowed his head, the arrogance gone. Tom Harris stepped aside to let them through. Maya sat back in seat 1A, closing her eyes gently. She hadn't defeated anyone. She had simply returned the sky to those who truly deserved to fly beneath its light. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the back of the cabin, accompanied by the flashing lights of airport security. It all happened within minutes, yet for those aboard Flight 409, time itself seemed to freeze. They had already witnessed the shift of power. Now, they were about to witness something even rarer, a person who won, yet refused to win by making others lose. Airport security entered first, followed by 2 representatives from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. No one shouted. No one was handcuffed. The air was eerily calm, broken only by the automated voice above Aurea Airways. Flight 409 status suspended. Awaiting verification. In the cockpit, Captain Rebecca Clean sat motionless at the controls, her eyes vacant, staring through the fog-swept runway. Outside, police and technical vehicles surrounded the aircraft, a silent circle of judgment. Inside the cabin, Richard Vance, the once smug CEO of Titan Air, now hung his head low. The audio of his own confession, his plan to tank Aurea's stock, had gone viral across the globe within minutes. His phone buzzed nonstop messages from his board revoking his authority, alerts from the SEC and DOJ announcing formal investigations. And through it all, Maya Cole, the woman humiliated less than half an hour ago, was now the only one still perfectly composed. An FAA agent stepped forward, his tone respectful but firm. "Dr. Cole, ma'am, can you confirm, do you want us to detain the individuals involved? Right here." Maya looked around the cabin. Rebecca, once the one shouting to remove her from seat 1A, sat hunched, her shoulders trembling. Mark Donovan, the co-pilot, looked a decade older than he had an hour ago. Laura Baines, the young flight attendant, still had tears streaked across her cheeks. Jason Reed, the head of security, stood rigid, eyes downcast. It was a surreal sight, those who once held authority now waiting, silent, for the judgment of the woman they had scorned. Maya shook her head gently. "No, they won't be arrested, at least. Not by me." The agent frowned, confused. "Ma'am, this isn't about a single violation," Maya said softly, yet firmly. "It's about a culture gone wrong, not just a few people who went wrong. If I punish them right now, I'll just be continuing the same cycle where the powerful get to punish the powerless. I'm not here to repeat that pattern." Her words rippled through the cabin like quiet thunder. No one moved, not out of fear, but out of something deeper realization. Maya turned toward Rebecca, her gaze steady but free of anger. "Rebecca, you were once one of Aurea's best captains. I chose you because I believed you understood what it meant to lead through character. But today, you led through fear. Fear of losing status. Fear of losing control." Rebecca's voice cracked. I didn't realize it had gone this far." Maya's eyes softened, but her tone didn't waver. "Didn't realize, or didn't want to." Rebecca bowed her head. Tears fell onto her gloves. Maya stepped into the center aisle, every gaze anchored on her. "Justice isn't about making someone kneel," she said slowly. "It's about making them face themselves." Then she turned back to the FAA team. "I want them suspended immediately. But I also want them enrolled in an internal restoration program, one that teaches the real consequences of discrimination. I want them, the ones who went wrong, to train the next generation in respect and dignity." One FAA official nodded thoughtfully. "You're describing a hybrid of punishment and reform." Maya smiled faintly. "I call it restorative justice. No one learns this lesson from a jail cell. They learn it by facing their reflection every single day." At the corner of the cabin, Tom Harris, the reserve pilot who had bravely exposed the elite club, watched with quiet admiration. He whispered to Alex Kim, still streaming live, "She's not just teaching us how to fly, she's teaching us how to be human." Alex nodded, voice trembling. "I used to think justice meant making someone pay. Now I see real justice is waking people up without making them feel destroyed." The FAA team turned to Richard Vance. "Mr. Richard Vance," said the lead investigator, "you're under investigation for market manipulation. You'll come with us." There was nothing left to say. Vance bowed his head, silent. As he passed Maya, she spoke not with venom, but with the calm precision of truth. Some defeats come at the right time, just long enough to remind us that power without ethics is nothing more than an illusion. Vance said nothing. He knew this time. No illusion could save him. A gray-haired passenger rose slowly, voice trembling. "Cole, I lived through a time when someone like you couldn't sit in first class. Today, I watched a woman not only sit there, but make an entire system bow to her grace. Thank you." Maya smiled softly. "Thank you, sir. But I didn't defeat anyone today. I just restored the rightful place of dignity in the sky we all share." Moments later, the FIA agents escorted Vance away. Rebecca, Laura, Mark, and Jason followed not in handcuffs, but in the heavy silence of people who just lost more than a career. They had lost themselves. Maya remained in seat 1A, staring through the window. The airport lights reflected off the glass, stretching into a long beam across the night, like the road she'd walked her whole life, from a child watching her mother humiliated on a plane to a woman who could make sure it would never happen again. She whispered quietly, just for herself, "Justice without compassion is only another form of power." On her way out of the airport, Maya's phone buzzed. A message from Priya Desai headquarters wants to know, "Do you plan to go public with this incident?" Maya looked out the window, at the moonlight glinting on the grounded plane. She smiled faintly and replied, "No, Priya, we don't need a scandal. We need new standards." That moment marked the birth of the Aurea Equity Initiative, the first cultural reform program in aviation history. And for the first time in years, the sky was being cleared so that true fairness could finally take flight. The incident aboard Flight 409 could easily have become just another noisy scandal in a chaotic media world. But for Dr. Maya Cole, it wasn't a storm to dodge. It was an opportunity to clear the sky. She didn't want fame. She didn't want revenge. She wanted to change from the roots the way people treat one another when they think they stand above. 3 weeks after that day of reckoning, at Aurea Innovations' Manhattan headquarters, the atmosphere was completely different. The hallways, once sleek and silent, now buzzed with urgent meetings, interviews, and endless questions from the press. "Dr. Cole, do you see this as a scandal? Will Aurea be firing people en masse? Do you believe this will change the aviation industry?" Maya simply smiled. "No, this isn't a scandal," she said. "It's a wake-up call, and it's our responsibility to answer it with action." The next day, during a company-wide meeting broadcast live around the world, Maya stood on a small stage, no spotlights, no grand speech, just her voice low, warm, and steady. "I've seen what happens when pride overshadows integrity. When people forget that someone else's dignity doesn't diminish their own. From today forward, Aurea will be more than an airline. We'll become a model of how people should treat one another when they share the same journey." Then she announced, "I call this program the Aurea Equity Initiative." No enchos. The initiative was built on 3 pillars, not slogans, but commitments. Pillar 1, AI monitors for human interaction. Every Aurea flight would now include an AI companion system, not to spy, but to listen. It would anonymously analyze the tone, language, and behavior of crew and passengers, flagging any signs of bias or discrimination in real time and sending alerts directly to HR and training departments. Maya explained, "We can't fix what we refuse to look at. And in this case, AI is the mirror that doesn't lie." Pillar 2. Mandatory empathy, training and transparent data. Every employee, from pilots and flight attendants to senior executives, would complete a new course called Empathy in the Sky. It didn't just teach rules of conduct. It made people experience what exclusion feels like so they could understand the invisible wounds caused by contempt. All service metrics complaints, satisfaction scores, behavioral audits would be published publicly every quarter. No more bearing misconduct in confidential reports, as Priya Desai and Carla Moore had once uncovered under Protocol 11. Now, transparency would be the foundation of trust. Pillar 3. Listening to passengers, led by Nina Gomez. During the press conference, Maya surprised everyone by calling up Nina Gomez, a junior flight attendant who had secretly and bravely sent evidence of internal misconduct to headquarters. Nina stepped onto the stage, still trembling, but with eyes full of resolve. Maya placed a hand on her shoulder. Nina didn't speak up to seek revenge. She spoke up to save the honor of a profession she still loves. And that's why I've asked her to lead our new passenger advocacy department. The room fell silent for a few seconds, then applause erupted. Not for a corporate decision, but for courage. The kind of courage so many had lost standing between right and wrong. After the meeting, Maya stayed alone by the window, looking down at Manhattan glowing in the night, a city lit by millions of stories about how humans treat one another every day. She thought of her mother, Eileen Cole, and the words she used to say back when they were turned away from airplanes. Don't climb high just to look down on others. Fly high enough to see everyone. Maya smiled. Maybe this right here was what her mother meant all along. A month later, the Aurea Equity Initiative officially launched. The media reaction was mixed. Some called it a soft revolution. Others were skeptical. Is AI surveillance a violation of privacy? Can empathy really be taught? Maya didn't argue. In a CBS interview, she simply said, "No system is perfect. But when we start with sincerity, even our mistakes can be healing." Why? 2 months later, the first results arrived. Customer complaints dropped 40%. Verbal discrimination cases fell by more than half. Other airlines from Delta to American began studying Aurea's equity dashboard. But what made Maya proudest wasn't the data. It was the change in people's eyes. Laura Baines, the flight attendant who once said this seat isn't for someone like you, had become one of the most passionate instructors in empathy in the sky. In one training session, she told new recruits, "I used to think my job was to serve customers by the book. Now I know my job is to protect dignity, theirs and my own." The room fell silent, not from fear of error, but from understanding. That night, Maya stood again at Hudson Terminal, watching Aurea aircraft rise into the dusk. A group of new trainees practiced greeting passengers nearby, and across the terminal, the display board glowed with the message, "Aurea Airways certified by the FAA for Equity Excellence." Maya exhaled, a soft, contented sigh. She knew the road ahead was long, but tonight, the sky felt just a little lighter, not because anyone had been punished, but because people were finally beginning to understand that respect is the best fuel for humanity's flight. As Maya returned to her office, Priya Desai hurried in, her face tense. "There's news. Maya, the FAA has referred the case to the DOJ. Rebecca and Mark might have to face trial. And Titan Air's collapsing." Maya said nothing. She looked out the window, a plane crossing the moonlight in the distance. Then she spoke quietly. Sometimes, justice doesn't need us to push it. It just needs us to stop holding it back. When the Aurea Equity Initiative went into motion, the media storm finally began to fade. But like every storm, it left its marks behind. And in that silence, each person tied to the tragedy of Flight 409 began their own private journey toward justice, not loud, not tragic, but quiet enough that each of them had to face the only judge that mattered themselves. It began on a crisp autumn morning. Priya Desai walked into Maya Cole's office, a stack of papers in her hand, the faint weariness of weeks on her face. The FAA and the Department of Justice have reached their final decision, she said. Maya nodded, unsurprised. How many people are affected? Priya looked down at the document. 4. 1. Captain Rebecca Clean, the one who stood highest. Rebecca lost her pilot's license permanently and received an 18-month suspended sentence for abuse of authority and deliberate violation of safety protocol. The press called her the falling captain. But to Maya, she wasn't a villain, just a symbol of a broken culture dressed in uniform. During her hearing, Rebecca's voice was hoarse when she said, "I thought I was defending standards. Turns out, I was just defending my seat." Maya sat quietly in the back row, never once taking the stand. When the session ended, she walked up, placed a gentle hand on Rebecca's shoulder, and whispered, "You can still fly, not with planes, but by helping others avoid the same fall." Rebecca wept. For the first time in years, she wasn't a captain. She was simply a human being, learning how to stand again without wings. 2. First Officer Mark Donovan, the one who stayed silent. Mark's punishment wasn't prison. It was the loss of honor. He was fired from the industry, stripped of every certification, and blacklisted from every airline in the country. A reporter asked him, "Do you regret it?" Mark answered yes, but not because I lost my job, because I stayed quiet when I saw something wrong. I thought silence was safety. Now I know it's the quickest way to lose yourself. Maya offered no public comment. She didn't need to. Some punishments don't come from courts. They come from mirrors. 3. Laura Baines, the youngest and the least knowing. Laura left Aurea a few weeks after the incident. She wasn't charged or sued, but no airline would hire her. She moved back to her hometown, working at a small cafe near the local airport. One afternoon, Maya stopped by, no entourage, no warning. Laura froze. "Dr. Cole," she stammered. Maya smiled. "Just Maya. I came to check on you, not inspect you." They sat by the window, watching planes trace pale lines across the sky. Laura's voice trembled. "I still remember that day. I looked at you and thought, someone like her doesn't belong in seat 1A. Now every time a customer walks in, I catch myself asking, am I thinking the same thing again?" Maya's smile was soft. "If you're still asking yourself that, it means you're already changing." 4. Jason Reed, the enforcer. Jason Reed, the head of security who once thought power was a weapon, was charged with intimidation and abuse of authority. He served 6 months in prison. In court, he spoke only once. "I thought I was protecting security. I was only protecting my ego." The day he was released, he received a letter with no signature. Just one line. "Not everyone understands justice, but everyone gets a chance to redeem it." The sender, of course, was Maya. 5. Richard Vance, the man who thought he was the game. The investigation into Titan Air shook the entire aviation industry. The SEC, DOJ, and FAA worked together, uncovering a web of fraudulent trades and market manipulation. Titan's stock collapsed down 80%. Vance was indicted for engineering a false crisis. The empire he'd built over 20 years turned to dust. In his final interview before arrest, he said quietly, "I forgot that even the sky doesn't belong to anyone." Maya heard the news in silence. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a sigh. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the scariest part isn't the fall, it's realizing how long you stood on the wrong side." Months passed. The headlines changed. People stopped calling it the Flight 409 scandal. They called it the flight that changed the sky. Aurea refused to turn it into a marketing story. Maya banned every PR campaign that tried. Justice isn't a product to sell. She told her team, it's a responsibility to sustain. And yet, change still came quietly, but steadily. Rebecca, after completing her suspended sentence, became an ethics instructor for new pilot trainees. Laura enrolled in Aurea's online empathy course, and 2 years later, she rejoined the company, this time as a passenger service representative. Mark wrote a viral essay titled "A Pilot Who Lost His Compass," a confession, but also a reflection. Jason Reed joined a nonprofit dedicated to protecting passengers from abuse of authority. And Vance from his prison cell requested that his remaining assets be transferred to the Aurea Fund for Equity in Aviation, the foundation Maya had created. Perhaps, at last, it was his way of paying back late, but real. One rainy evening, Maya stood on her office balcony, watching the city through the drizzle. The sky was gray, but no longer heavy. She thought of the long road from the humiliation of her past to that moment under 1,000 cameras, to now when justice was no longer a personal story, but part of the system itself. Priya walked up beside her. "It's over." "Maya." Maya smiled. "No, Priya. It's just beginning only now, under a cleaner sky." That night, Maya opened her laptop and signed the first grant from the Aurea Fund, 800 scholarships for aspiring pilots and engineers women, people of color, and Latin heritage students who dreamed of the sky but were rarely allowed to touch it. As she pressed approve, she whispered to herself, "We've lived through the wreckage. Now it's time to rebuild the sky." That night, as Dr. Maya Cole pressed approve on the first round of funding, she didn't feel like she just executed a business plan. She felt as if she'd written a new chapter in history, not for Aurea Airways, but for every person who had once been told they were not qualified to fly. The sky, once a privilege of the few, was about to become the space of everyone who carried the dream of flight in their hearts. The next morning, inside the glass-walled boardroom on the 42nd floor of Aurea Innovations, Maya presented her new project to the executive board and the FIA. No grand reveal, no corporate video, just numbers and a world map dotted with tiny points of light, each one representing a life waiting for a chance to rise. "We call it the Aurea Fund for Equity in Aviation," Maya began. "The first phase will sponsor 800 underrepresented trainees, people of color, Latin heritage, women, and those who were once pushed out of this industry by bias." A finance director asked bluntly, "Dr. Cole, where's the profit in that?" Maya looked up. steady. The profit lies in the future, where these people become pilots, engineers, executives, and never have to ask again whether they're allowed to sit in that seat. News of the Aurea Fund spread faster than any PR campaign, not because it was marketed, but because it was believed in. Across social media, a new hashtag took flight, Chonka Equity in the Skies. People shared stories Maya's, Flight 409's, and their own. They told me women couldn't be pilots. I was rejected because of my skin color. Now my son will fly thanks to this fund. Thank you, Maya Cole. You didn't just buy back the sky, you shared it. Then another tag appeared. She owns the sky. At first, Maya felt uneasy with it. She didn't want to be idolized. But then, a letter arrived from a group of black students in Atlanta. You don't own the sky. Dr. Cole, you made it ours. Maya smiled. Sometimes, you have to give away power to let power truly belong to everyone. The FAA soon reached out formally. They wanted Aurea's empathy in the Sky curriculum and its transparent monitoring model as a framework for industry-wide reform. A year earlier, no one could have imagined the nation's aviation regulator would ask advice from a woman of color once told she didn't belong in first class. Now, they sought her perspective for every new equity policy. During one meeting, an FAA representative said, Dr. Cole, we can't change the past, but maybe we can learn how to fly differently, Maya replied softly. No one's born knowing how to take off. What matters is that we keep learning and we don't let old scars guide the hands at the controls. Across the street from Aurea's headquarters, Nina Gomez now led the new passenger advocacy office. On her wall hung the first photograph from the pilot training program 800 Faces, 800 stories, each one from a different background, a different pain, but all united by one truth. They had once been underestimated, and now they were rewriting that story with their own hands. In the opening ceremony, Nina said, "We weren't born to prove our worth. We were born to fulfill it." The crowd rose to their feet in applause. In the back row, Maya sat quietly, eyes shimmering. She didn't want applause. She only wanted this to hear new voices filling the sky, none of them out of tune. Soon, other airlines followed suit. Delta, American, even several European carriers announced their own equity programs. A headline from the New York Herald read, "The Aurea effect is spreading worldwide." A woman once removed from seat 1A has reshaped the global aviation industry. Maya read the article in silence. She felt no pride, only clarity. When justice is built with patience, she thought, it doesn't need anyone to shout its name. One evening, Maya returned to Hudson Terminal, where it had all begun. She stood in the first-class lounge, the very spot where, a year ago, she had been told, "This seat isn't for someone like you." Now, a new sign hung on the wall, "All skies, one dignity." Maya smiled, lifting her gaze to the window. Outside, an Aurea aircraft passed overhead, its silver wing emblem the mark of the Aurea Equity Initiative glinting in the sun. Beside her, a girl of about 12 tugged on her mother's sleeve, pointing up at the plane. "Mom, I want to be a pilot like Dr. Maya Cole." "You can, sweetheart," the mother replied. "Now, everyone can." Maya turned away, hiding her smile behind her eyes. That she thought was the greatest reward of all, knowing that future children would no longer have to fight for what she had once bled to defend. That night, at home, Maya opened her window to a sky scattered with stars. She thought of her mother, Eileen Cole, the woman who'd once been denied a chance to fly simply because of her color. Maya whispered into the night, "Mom, I couldn't change your past, but I did something small so that others will never live it again." A soft breeze drifted in, stirring the photograph of Eileen on Maya's desk. Under the lamplight, her mother's face seemed to smile. A year later, an envelope arrived from the International Aviation Federation. They invited Dr. Maya Cole to speak at the inaugural ceremony of Equity in Aviation. She sat quietly, holding the silver-edged card, reading the final line printed in elegant type. When dignity becomes a system, justice no longer needs to fight. Maya smiled. Perhaps, she thought, that was the message her mother had always meant to leave the world. After the launch of the Aurea Fund, after the headlines and hashtags that swept across the world, Dr. Maya Cole kept her old habit each night. She stepped out onto her balcony and looked up at the sky, not to feel proud, but to listen, because somewhere among those stars, she could still hear the voice of her mother, Eileen Cole, the woman whose quiet tears and unspoken courage had planted the very seeds of Maya's justice. Me? One winter afternoon, Maya returned to her childhood home in Savannah, Georgia, a small wooden house tucked beneath old oak trees, where she had grown up beside her mother. The door still creaked the same way. In the corner cabinet, her mother's brown leather suitcase still sat, untouched by time. Maya opened it. Inside were only a few yellowed photographs and a small notebook. On the first page, written in blue ink, "If one day you ever fly, remember to look down because someone else is still waiting to take off." Maya sat on the floor, silent. She had spent her life trying to make that sentence real, but only now did she truly understand what it meant. Eileen had worked as a ground crew attendant for a small airline in the 1970s. She loved planes, dreamed of sitting in the cockpit. But in those days, a black woman who wanted to be a pilot was almost a contradiction in itself. Maya remembered being 8 years old, standing beside her mother at the airport, watching the planes rise through the clouds. Her mother had said, "See, sweetheart, the sky doesn't choose. People do." That sentence had cut deep, not because it was bitter, but because it was true. From that moment, Maya made herself a promise. If she ever had the power to choose, she would choose differently. Now, sitting in that old house, she felt her mother's presence beside her as if Eileen were sitting in the chair across from her, a cup of tea in her hand, that gentle, knowing smile in her eyes. If her mother were still alive, Maya imagined she'd ask, "Did you do what you set out to do?" And Maya would answer, "I don't know. Mom, I just know I never let silence win." Oh, in the aviation world, the name Maya Cole had become more than a title. Not because she was a CEO, not because of her wealth or awards, but because she had chosen not to fight with anger. She had chosen to build a system where injustice had no place to live. When asked about her leadership philosophy, she always said justice shouldn't arrive after someone's been hurt. It should exist so that no one ever has to be. She called it preventive justice, and it became the compass guiding every Aurea policy. Ni Twain. Under the Equity Initiative, airlines now made their passenger service data public. Training programs no longer taught just skills, they taught awareness. Former victims of discrimination were invited to become policy advisors. During one international panel, Maya shared her mother's story. She was denied a chance to learn to fly because of her color. But she never taught me hate. She taught me to learn to understand why hate is never the answer. The room fell silent. A woman in the front row wiped her tears and whispered, "She must be so proud." One evening, back in her hotel room after a conference in Geneva, Maya received an email from a young trainee, Lena Morris, the first black woman to win an Aurea pilot scholarship. It read, "I don't know if you'll ever see this, but today I completed my first solo flight. When the plane touched down, I cried because I realized someone once fought so that I could be here." Maya sat for a long time after reading it. She didn't reply. She just looked out the window at the endless night sky and whispered, "Mom, your sky, someone's flying in it now." Sometimes, Maya thought about how people misunderstood justice. They imagined it as a sword, something to strike, to punish. But to her, justice was a door, a passage everyone could walk through, with dignity intact. "When dignity becomes a system," she once said at a global summit, "justice won't have to fight so hard." The quote was engraved on a bronze plaque at the FAA headquarters and spread across the world as a new humanist credo for the modern age. Every morning, before meetings, Maya walked through the garden outside Aurea's campus, now called the Eileen Cole Memorial Garden. In its center stood a statue of a woman reaching up toward the sky, engraved with the words, "She never flew, but she helped the world fly." New employees often paused there, reading, smiling. None of them had met Eileen Cole, but all of them understood everything they were building today had begun with the dream of an ordinary woman who had once been denied, yet never stopped believing. During a television interview one afternoon, a journalist asked Maya, "If you could say one thing to your mother now, what would it be?" Maya looked into the camera and smiled softly. "I'd thank her for not letting bitterness kill her dreams. I'm just continuing what she began teaching the world, that compassion is the safest flight path there is." The audience rose to their feet. For a long, quiet moment, they simply applauded, not out of admiration, but because they felt healed. That night, Maya looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter than ever, as if someone up there was smiling back at her. Tomorrow would mark 1 year since the Flight 409 incident. At the anniversary ceremony, Maya knew she would say just one line a line her mother would have agreed with. "We didn't change the sky. We just helped it reflect the right light, the light of dignity." On the final night of the year, Dr. Maya Cole sat by her office window, watching New York shimmer beneath a blanket of snow. 1 year had passed since Flight 409 was grounded, a year in which the world of aviation had changed slowly, but unmistakably. She didn't feel like a winner. She felt like a passenger, someone who had traveled the long route of justice and finally arrived at a destination called honesty. BT. The next morning, the Grand Hall of Aurea Innovations was simply decorated. No giant banners, no cinematic music, just rows of polished wooden chairs and a warmth that filled the air. It was the 1-year anniversary of the Aurea Equity Initiative, the program that had quietly rewritten the face of an entire industry. On the screen behind the stage, images appeared: trainee pilots in simulators, young female engineers in control rooms, flight attendants helping elderly passengers up the ramp, all wearing the silver wing emblem of Aurea. Then Maya's recorded voice echoed through the speakers, calm and steady. "Justice isn't a destination. It's how we choose to fly together." every single day. The room felt completely still. When Maya walked onto the stage, the audience rose. She wore a light gray suit, no heels, no bright lipstick, just a woman who looked ordinary, with eyes that carried the kind of light only found in those who've learned to forgive without forgetting. She began softly, almost like a breath a year ago. We had a flight that never took off, but that was also the moment another journey began. Maya paused, scanning the faces before her employees, scholarship students, FAA officials, and even some who had once opposed her. There were no more divisions, no more seats that weren't meant for someone like her. She spoke of the past year not to boast, but to bear witness. We've trained over 800 new cadets. 5 airlines have adopted the Aurea equity model. And for the first time, the FAA has published an industry-wide equity index as a national standard. But what I'm proudest of isn't in those numbers. It's in how we've learned to listen to each other. She spoke of Laura Baines, once the flight attendant who denied her a seat, now a training advisor, of Rebecca Clean, once the captain who shouted her down, now teaching aviation ethics, and of Nina Gomez, the quiet whistleblower now leading the empathy data research team. I used to think justice meant seeing the guilty punished. Now I understand true justice is when even they get a chance to make things right. Applause followed not loud, but rhythmic and sincere, like the heartbeat of gratitude. After her speech, Maya stepped down from the stage as a young woman approached Lena Morris, the scholarship student who had written to her a year earlier. Lena took the microphone, her voice trembling. "Dr. Cole, without you, I might still only be dreaming of the sky. Today, I don't just fly for myself, I fly for your mother, and for everyone who was ever told they couldn't." Maya bowed her head. Her eyes glimmered not with pride, but with relief, as if an old promise had finally been kept. When the ceremony ended, Maya stepped out onto the rooftop terrace. The sky that day was impossibly clear, as if every storm of the past year had washed it clean. One by one, Aurea planes lifted off, their white contrails carving paths through silver-gray clouds. Priya, her longtime aide, joined her, handing her a cup of coffee. "You tired?" Maya smiled. "No, just landing." Priya raised an eyebrow. "Landing," Maya nodded. "Landing in a place called honesty, where justice no longer needs to prove it's right." That evening, at home, Maya turned on her mother's old radio. Louis Armstrong's "What a Wonderful World" played that gravelly, tender voice filling the room. On the table sat a photograph of Eileen Cole, the woman who had never been allowed to learn to fly. Maya placed her hand on the frame and whispered, "Mom, I didn't change the sky. I just helped it reflect the right light, the light of dignity." She closed her eyes, listening to the distant hum of airplanes overhead. Justice, she thought, wasn't the sound of a verdict. It was the engine's hum of a world finally learning to respect itself. The next morning, major headlines filled every front page. Aurea Airways sets the global standard for equity in aviation. From tragedy to legacy. How Dr. Maya Cole changed the world. But Maya didn't read the full articles. She turned to the last page instead, where a small anonymous comment read, "Justice moves quietly, yet its echo travels far. Thank you for proving that kindness still has a place in this world." Maya folded the paper and smiled. Perhaps that was the most fitting ending of all. As night fell, Maya stepped onto her balcony. Above her, an Aurea jet glided through the darkness, its lights flickering across her eyes. No cheers, no fireworks, just silence, the kind of silence that belongs to someone who has kept her promise to her mother, to herself, and to the sky. She whispered, "Justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs honesty and faith that light will always find its way." The story of Dr. Maya Cole, the black woman once denied a first-class seat, who went on to become the symbol that changed an entire industry, isn't just about power or justice. It's a reminder of something deeper, the quiet strength of calm, intelligence, and compassion in the face of insult. When she was dismissed, Maya didn't choose anger. She chose to look deeper into the system, into the roots of injustice, and from there, she changed the entire sky. That message reaches far beyond aviation. It touches every one of us in our workplaces, our families, and across the differences of daily life. Sometimes the strongest response isn't to strike back, but to rebuild the very environment where wrong no longer has room to exist. And when dignity becomes a habit, justice no longer needs to shout to be heard. If you've ever been underestimated, treated unfairly, or told you didn't belong, remember this silence isn't weakness. It can be the first step toward acting with wisdom and forcing the world to change on your terms. Thank you for walking with us through this story. If you believe that justice can begin with kindness, hit like, share this video, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart, where true strength doesn't come from shouting, but from honesty and from the light of human dignity.